for the invitation. It's always difficult to present to an industry that you've got no experience of. Obviously, I see what you guys do and appreciate it very greatly whenever I go on the roads, but I understand from what you're trying to achieve is to get an inkling as to what is required of setting up a drone capability. So really, I ought to just take a few slides to establish my credentials in the drone space, if you like, and then we'll talk about the drone capability itself and how you would go about it and what the important steps are for it. I joined the Air Force in 1985 as a fighter pilot, and I went through training and did what was called the Tactical Weapons course, stayed in the fast jet stream and was posted to the Buccaneer. When I got to the Buccaneer, I had to do the Tactical Weapons course again, this time on the Hunter, which is that aircraft there, before moving on to fly that Buccaneer on the Operational Conversion Unit. After about 6 months, I went to 208 Naval Squadron, Naval 8, flying this, the Buccaneer, in the maritime strike attack role with the Sea Eagle missile. While I was there, I got a bit of an interest. If you look on the, as you look at it, the right-hand wing, there's a thing with a yellow stripe around it underneath the first pylon outboard of the engine. That's called the paved spike. And that's a laser for firing at targets for laser-guided bombs. Here's a better picture of it. And, of course, that became synonymous with taking down bridges in the Gulf War. I was the pairs leader, and then Gulf War 1 happened, and with my expertise in laser-guided bombs, I was a busy fella. I got retoured at the end of that and did another tour on the Buccaneer before getting my fours lead, which means you're able to lead a 4-ship of aircraft in combat, and did lots of other deployments. Then I was posted to the Tornado. This is me with 2 Seagulls under the wing, under the belly, and 2 big fuel tanks and some self-protection on the outboards. We used to go through a tri-national training unit with Italians and Germans, and then we'd come back to the Brits to fly a weapons conversion unit. I was then sent to a strike attack squadron, which is nuclear as well as bombing, number 27 squadron, before being sent on the tactical leadership program, which is where you learn to lead packages, coalition packages for first night of the war type stuff. On a typical first night, you'd have 3 packages go into combat led by a package commander, and they will have all done the tactical leadership program. Then went on Operation Jural, which was the southern bit of Iraq, before coming back to 12 Squadron, and that's me again flying with 2 Seagulls in front of a Nimrod and another squadron, an aircraft from 617, the Dambusters. Back on Operation Jural before going to northern Iraq on Operation Warden. At the end of that, everybody has to do an instructional tour at some point. Mine was on the Hawk. Therefore, before you become an instructor on a course, you have to do the course. So this was my 3rd run through the fastest and the best course in the world, which was the TAC Weapons course. So I had to do it 3 times before I could teach on it. So every day I was a TAC Weapons instructor, which was the best thing going. So I was an instructor at the Central Flying School, and that has really enabled me now to capitalise on those skills, the flying skills and the instructional skills to take drone flying forward. More about that in a second. I'd already been on 208 Squadron, and now I'm on 208 Squadron again, and now it's flying the Hawk. I was a qualified tactics instructor and a flight commander. And then I was posted to the other side of the runway to 74 Squadron, again as a flight commander, before doing the qualified weapons instructor course, which is the hardest course in the RAF. Did okay at that, and then went to the Central Flying School as an instructor of instructors, and then ran the weapons instruction flight, which was teaching the weapons course, and ended up as the executive officer before the boss was taken long-term ill, and I ended up commanding 19 Hawk Squadron for a little while they found a replacement. I was near the end of my tour, so I asked if I could have a single-seat air defence exchange, and I forgot about the Navy, so I was posted to the Harrier, Sea Harrier FA2 with the Navy, about 2 months of ground school, 6 months of learning to hover the thing and flying it around on instruments, and then we go into the operational phase. Did okay at that and was posted to 800 Naval Air Squadron. This is me on 122 aboard HMS Ark Royal. Did the Air Warfare Instructor course, which is the same course that Top Gun was modelled on, before going back to 800 Squadron, still aboard, now aboard Art Royal, before being posted as an instructor on 899, which was the training squadron. I was the Force Air Warfare instructor until my daughter was born, and you can't be a fighter pilot and a daddy. So I left, joined the airlines. I joined Britannia. This is a 767, this one. But after a few weeks of being at Britannia, I was recalled into service to help design the aircraft carrier, the new aircraft carrier, HMS Queen Elizabeth and Prince of Wales. There she is. And I did 3 years pretty much helping to design that aircraft carrier as the integration officer for putting all aviation into the design. In fact, the design was done around aviation. It was the first time that a carrier had been designed around the aviation, not aviation shoehorned into a carrier. I set up a company, did some training for Lockheed Martin, designed the RAF, the Navy and the Army's flying training. And then back to the airlines with a German airline called Hapag-Lloyd for 6 months to do a command course. Came back to do all the difficult flying into crazy airports with an aeroplane that shouldn't really stop on little runways. And then I broke my neck. And that's a picture of it. That was in a simulator which fell off its jacks and broke my neck. So I was off work for some time. To add insult to already bruised injury, I had 3 heart attacks in one day, which now it's starting to look a bit dodgy as to whether I'll fly again. So I did a drone course, and I did a drone course with the then best training provider, and it was so rubbish I asked for my money back. So I founded Flyby Technology, which has now become the number 1 training school in the UK. I had some hand operations because my hands stopped working, but it doesn't look like they are now, of course. But I was still able to fly a drone, and now I'm still able to fly an airliner, and I'm a training captain on the Boeing 787. So that's my journey to where I am with drones and how I got into drones and the credentials behind the training skills that we've got in Flyby Technology. Flyby Technology itself as a company, all of our instructors have got the same background that I've got, all military, air warfare instructors or qualified flying instructors, so that we get the message over to the students. We're not hobbyists that have decided to now train, we are trainers that fly at the highest standard. And we're now the consultancy of choice and the pilots of choice for the NHS in test and trace. We do all of that flying for the NHS. So what do you need if you're going to be building a drone capability? One of the problems that a lot of people have right at the very start is that they don't know what they don't know, and quite often will invest a little bit of money in a very few people, and that money then gets wasted. What's needed really is to follow a set of obvious steps. People quite often find that there's somebody with an interest in drones, and they'll invest in that person to either get some training or to buy a drone, then off they go, and then that person either leaves or that aeroplane crashes because they haven't invested properly, or the aeroplane gets old and out of date, and the whole thing atrophies away, it all withers on the vine, and then you're left without a capability. So really what should happen is to follow a set of steps. What do we need then? Well, we need to select the right training provider to start with and the right information so that you can then get a clear vision of what you're wanting to achieve today. But remember, what you're wanting today is not what you're going to have. By the time it comes into service, it will have morphed into something either bigger, more expensive, or more complex. So you need to understand that this will always grow. It's a leviathan, and flying is not something that can be done by hobbyists at the levels that you guys are going to be looking at doing. So you need to know what the future looks like, and to do that, you need experienced consultancy from those that are in the know. Between you and the training provider and the consultancy, you'll need to write a ConOps, much the same way as you do now, I'm sure, for new projects. But then you need to select the pilots properly. Between you then, you need to write the requirements for what the capability must look like. That will then write the requirements for the equipment. Don't buy a drone. The drone is not important. By the time you've opened the package, it's out of date. it's obsolete before you've even put the phone down after ordering it. So don't worry about the equipment. The sensors on it and the software that it uses are far more important than the aircraft itself. But unless the training of the pilots are correct, you haven't got a capability. So purchase the equipment to satisfy that requirement, and then train the pilots and the managers to achieve that capability. So you can see it's almost a reverse of what everybody seems to do. All right, so you deliver the capability sustainably that way, but of course, as with all processes, you need to review that process and start again and do the whole loop over and over again. Without following this process, you will end up with drones gathering dust, covered in stuff, and not working to full potential. And the potential is enormous, for obviously, for this technology. So in terms of training providers, what really would you seek out? I know I'm obviously keen on my own company, but there are others, of course. And training providers, you must seek out the following. They must have teaching qualifications. Too many times people do a course and then 3 weeks later you find them setting up a training school based on very little provenance of their own credentials, and the depth and diversity of their knowledge is then very, very suspicious and very suspect. Also look for a company that can get you through the regulatory hurdles. You are in one industry and you have an enormous amount of regulation, both in HSE and whatever other professional bodies govern your activity. Imagine a whole new set of that being layered right upon you. Thankfully, the beauty of it is that the CAA only deals with aviation. So look for a team that can deal with just aviation and leave you to get on with the other stuff. What you don't want is aviation documentation being interspersed with your own documentation. Keep the two as very separate swim lanes. Otherwise, you'll be overrun by the regulatory bus. It will be impossible to deal with. So leave them to do that regulatory support. And also make sure that they're able to support you in the months and years ahead, and that they can keep bringing you the good ideas, because you don't want to be monitoring a separate industry and looking for new innovation and new capabilities. Let somebody else do that for you and bring it to you and set it up for you. So unless they're able to do that, I wouldn't touch them. And also make sure that they've got a wide range of drone interests. If they're not looking at all of the technologies, what else are they missing? If they're in one very narrow swim lane, that's not growing a capability. That's putting blinkers on the racer. You're not going to be able to see the innovations as they materialize and develop. So make sure that they're involved in the design and innovation of technology. If they're not, then they're going to be tracking it. And in drones, 2 days after you stop tracking the technology, you're completely out of date. This is moving at such a fast rate. It's ahead of the military in terms of innovation, speed and agility. So how do you train pilots? Once you've selected a training provider, what training do those pilots need? Well, there are 2 certificates that are coming up. They're available now, but you won't be able to utilise the privileges of these certificates until after the 31st of December. They're using European rule sets, which may or may not come into fruition. We're told every day by the CAA, oh, don't worry, it's definitely happening, but we've been told that before, haven't we? So there's a thing called the A2 Certificate of Competence. Sorry, that's my bad. That's a spell checker there. It's Certificate of Competence and General Visual Line of Sight Certificate. And visual line of sight means you can still see the drone. So those are the 2 certificates. And what does the A2 CFC enable you to do? Well, first of all, a pilot has to self-declare what skills they've got in terms of handling. Now, if you went to try and get your driver's license and you said to the instructor, don't have to do the test, I've done one myself with my dad, you'd look a bit bemused, wouldn't you? But that's essentially what you can do with the A2 CFC. However, you must do a course covering 3 modules, at the end of which is a closed book examination. And that enables you then to fly near people, but not over them, but with very lightweight drones. Now, the sort of work that you guys are going to be doing, you're going to be away from people, but not always. But you're never going to be using lightweight drones. The sort of drones that you guys will be looking at, I should imagine, will be in the inspection and surveying class, certainly up to 6 or 7 kilograms. And if you start getting into heavy lift drones, lifting 150 kilos, then you're going to be way above that, and then you'll need a different certificate. But the A2CFC will enable you to operate within 150 metres of congested areas. But you can never overfly somebody, and the drone will always be less than 4 kilograms. Let's have a look at the General Visual Line of Sight certificate then. There's an extensive ground school covering 8 modules. We try and do that in 8 evenings of ground school endeavour, at the end of which, of course, there'll be an examination, again, closed book. And at the end of that, your organisation will need to write an operations manual. But don't worry, that's taken care of by most of the good training providers. If it's not, then you're with the wrong one. So, as I'm sure you have operations manuals for compliance in many other areas of your own industry, you shouldn't have to be a complete expert on aviation authoring to be able to fly drones. So leave that to the training provider. And then the pilots will need flight skills training. At the end of that, we have to check that, of course, that they've assimilated all of the learning, all of the behaviours have been adopted, all of the processes are readily understood, and all of the procedures can be followed by that pilot. And so there'll be a flight skills test right at the very end to make sure that they can be let loose on the general public and near your own personnel and colleagues. So flight over people, yes, it's a possibility with the GV LOS certificate or GV loss certificate, but you can't be within somebody that's not under your control. So a member of the public who's straying by, you've got to be outside of a demi-hemisphere 50 metres away from them. So imagine an upturned pudding basin and it follows them around 50 metres. You can never be closer than 50 metres unless you get their approval so to do. But you can fly inside 150 metres of a congested area, and a congested area is somewhere where you can congregate for recreation, habitation, work, and public gatherings. And the drone can be between 0 and 20 kilograms, 25 kilograms after January the 21st. However, you can go very much heavier than 20 kilos, but then you need a special operating safety case. And again, your training provider should be able to write those on your behalf and with you to give you those extra capabilities, especially if you're going to be using heavy lift drones to lift bags of aggregate or whatever it is that you decide to lift, or railway sleepers. All sorts of things are possible with drones. We've just been asked to look for Land Forestry Scotland. They've got to plant 63 million trees, and at the moment they've planted all of the ones that a quad bike can get to, and so now they need drones to lift and pre-position all the saplings above the tree line to extend the tree line, because young lads are now carrying 4 on their back at the start of the day, and that's all they can do. And 63 million is a lot to solve in the next few years. And so drones are the answer for that. Helicopters, way too expensive and not a green footprint. So the GV loss will give you better flying opportunities all round. The operations manual, well, it's same as any other operations manual that you may see, only it's aviation specific. It is the description of the way you intend to comply with the regulations. It's a contract in a way with the CAA, because if you, the Civil Aviation Authority, if you don't follow your operations manual, you are not compliant and your insurance is invalidated. And the Civil Aviation Authority do spot checks, and the operations manual itself must always be describing that which you are doing today. So you can't just update it once a year and think that's okay. If you change anything, change your capability, then you have to adapt this operations manual. You only have to submit it once a year, but if you have a spot check, it has to be accurate, and you will be given a failure to comply notice if it isn't accurate when they come to visit you. That should be taken care of with your consultancy provider. So pilots themselves then, this is also a mistake that companies make. They tend to let the person with an interest just get on with it. That is not the answer. They also try and get people who say yes all the time. Oh, well, they'll be all right because they're really good at stuff. No, quite the opposite. So let's have a look at pilots. You mustn't select yes men. You need people who are going to say no to you. The pilot that says no will not crash, more than likely. Those that are always saying, oh, okay, then they're talking themselves into performing at a level that's often beyond their skills and capabilities, and they will get caught out. Or you might be asking them to fly in situations that are illegal, and they need to be able to say no. You also need to be able to select the free thinker, because flying is the purest application of common sense, and sadly, common sense isn't that common. And so we need to find those free thinkers. You can find a route through the forest that's different to the one that we always take, because we might find things in that forest that are pretty unpleasant, and if we didn't know that they were there, then how can we avoid them when we can't stay on the paths that we normally stay on? So you need free thinkers to find those extra paths through the forest with different ways of doing things, and they need to be encouraged as well. And they also need to be able to say no. If when somebody says no, the organisation says, well, I want you to say yes. No, that's not acceptable. Then you're sort of missing the point. It also means that by saying no, you have to support their decisions 100%, because they're the pilots, they're the ones that have had the training. It's not for somebody without the training to make any decisions about flying. It's only the person that's undergone the training. You have to devolve that authority down to them to be able to make those decisions. And they can't work unless they work in a just culture. I'm not sure if you guys have a just culture in quarrying, but a just culture for us means that you can make a mistake, you can crash an aeroplane, as long as you didn't do so recklessly or acting in a negligent fashion. Accidents happen, and so we call that the just culture. And it doesn't mean that you can't be prosecuted or criticised. It just means that you can't be sacked if you gave every good endeavour and you tried to follow all of the processes and procedures to the best of your ability. You were just caught out because of a lack of skill, or you hadn't thought of something, but you tried. Then that's what the just culture is there to protect. And what it does, it enables open and honest reporting so that we can find those areas of the operation that are weak or dangerous, and we can then put in place new procedures, new processes to take away that danger. If we don't have a just culture, we'll never find out about them until we have an accident. And then you sack the person that's the only one in the organisation that's never going to make that mistake again. So the just culture is important. And provide them also with the right technical information and support. If they need an aircraft, then give them a new aircraft. If they need a new piece of equipment and they're having to do workarounds because their equipment is shoddy or not up to date or isn't the best in standard, then that needs to be addressed. Let's just have a quick look at a summary then of what we've done. It's not the drone that's important. This is one of our heavy lift aircraft that can lift 150 kilos. It's not the drone that's important. The drone is out of date by the time you open the box. It's not the pilot that's important at the start, because the one that you're probably going to select is certainly not going to be the most appropriate one. That needs to be looked at in a completely different way in the future. It's the training and the planning of building that capability that is the most important thing, and you need to plan that properly in the right way. Don't go off really at the start in an incoherent, haphazard way, trying to find a new route through the forest. All you'll do is find one route. It won't be the right route. So find the plan, develop the plan together with somebody who can help you organise and implement and scale the operation, because there's no point doing it in one place. If the whole organisation needs it, it has to be done in a coherent set of steps. And as with anything in the military, you come up with the plan and then you throw everything at it that you've got. But of course, we keep it under review all of the time. So execute the plan and drive down the decision that you've made to build a true drone capability, whether it's in measuring stuff or moving stuff. It's important. And empower your pilots to make decisions. You've got to devolve down to the lowest operational level decision making. If you're keeping all of the decisions high up, tactical opportunities are missed, strategic opportunities are never identified. The people with the expertise are the pilots that have undergone all of that training. Give them the opportunity to say no, give them the opportunity to develop new ways of working. Don't tie their hands because it's easy to do that. You will be losing far more than you're gaining by doing that. And support your pilots. Pilots make mistakes, they're humans. You will have accidents, that's part of it. It's the way of the world. Don't also try and get from where we are today to this nirvana of automated flight and robotic flights and AI. That will not happen in the next 5 years. And I'm involved in all of that. What will happen is pilots monitoring aircraft that are on automatic flight plans and are using automation. But you'll never get automated aircraft operating alone. Don't think about reducing headcount. Pilots are expensive, but it's not as expensive as not having them. And remember that we need that just culture as well. If you put the just culture in place, the availability of innovative thought will percolate up, and it'll give you a lot more ideas and generate far more opportunities for you. And then, and only then, will you be able to earn the rewards. So that was a very quick run through.